All right. Sit down, grab your coffee, your water, whatever you got, because this Washington Commanders offseason is hitting different right now. And when I say different, I am not talking about somebody signing a tiny little extension and everybody holding hands and singing. Nah, I am talking about decisions that are going to define who we are as a franchise for the next 2, 3, 4 years. We are 1 week away from free agency opening up, and the rumors, the reports, the insiders, everything is dropping at the same time. It is chaotic. It is beautiful. It is NFL offseason, baby. And today we have 3 storylines that, if you are a Commanders fan, are going to keep you glued to the screen. One involves one of the most beloved players in the recent history of this franchise, and the future of that relationship is looking complicated. Another one is about the offensive line, which already lost Tyler Biadasz and now might be about to lose another key piece. And the third one has that nostalgic flavor with a tight end who became a legend in another city and might be packing bags to go back where it all started, leaving Washington behind. 3 stories. One goal, figure out what the hell is going on with this franchise we love and hate in equal parts. Bro, let us roll. News 1, Terry, McLaurin $97 million and an uncertain future in Washington. Okay. Deep breath, because this one stings. Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, the one player who for years was literally the only reason to even turn the game on Sundays. The one out there catching passes from quarterbacks who had no business being in the NFL and still making the wideout look all pro. That Terry McLaurin, and right now, according to insider Matthew Berry, the 2026 season could be the last time the jersey says McLaurin on the back in burgundy and gold. Listen to how that sounds. The last year. And it is not because Terry supposedly wants out. It is because the front office, led by Adam Peters, might be ready to move on. Bro, that is a statement. That is a giant neon sign that something broke behind the scenes. Something we as fans are never going to see fully, but we can absolutely piece together if we read between the lines. This all starts with the holdout. You remember last summer, right? McLaurin wanted that extension and wanted it right now, and was right to want it because this was the most productive, most consistent receiver this franchise had seen in years. So he drew a line, refused to report to training camp, missed the entire preseason, just about missed the start of the regular season, and in the end, the Commanders caved and handed over a 3-year, $97 million contract. $97 million. Fam, that is not play money. That is real commitment to a player you are supposedly building around. But here's the problem, the real problem. When he finally signed and showed up at camp, Terry was not ready. Weeks away from the field, no practice, no reps with the quarterback, no chemistry built up. That bill always comes due, and it came due on the field all season long in 2025. He finished with 38 catches, 582 yards, and only 3 touchdowns. Those are the worst numbers of his entire pro career. Stats that, if you gave them to somebody with no context, they would think you were talking about a 4th-string receiver, not the one who just signed for damn near $100 million. Bro, 38 catches. I had more grabs playing flag football at the park a couple years ago, and I am not an athlete in any professional universe. Now, to be fair here, Terry got hurt too, missed 7 games with injuries, the most he has ever missed. So yeah, some of those bad stats have a medical explanation, not just performance, but here is the point. The front office sees it all as a problem. They see a player who stirred up drama, who made the organization look bad in public, then did not deliver on the field, and on top of that, missed over half the season. That combo in any NFL front office sets off sirens, and Matthew Berry, who has real NFL sources, flat out said the organization is going to beef up the receiver room with an emphasis on speed. That word, speed, is not an accident. Terry McLaurin is fast, yeah, but at 30 years old, that first step is not what it was when he hit the league in 2019, and if Peters is actively hunting speed, that sounds less like trying to complement Terry and more like trying to replace Terry. Berry even dropped something that blew my mind. Said a source told him that if the top 3 edge rushers are off the board before pick 7, the Commanders could use that pick on Carnell Tate, the wideout from Ohio State. Bro, if we are seriously talking about burning the 7th overall pick on a receiver when there is already $97 million tied up in McLaurin, That tells me one thing crystal clear. In Peters' head, Terry McLaurin is not in the long-term blueprint. Terry is a bridge, a placeholder while the rest of the roster is getting built. Now let us talk about trust being broken, because that is really what this is. Commanders Wire put it in harsh terms, calling McLaurin the most disappointing player on the team this season. I do not buy that whole storyline because the holdout was justified and injuries are real, not some cop-out. But there is some truth in the idea that the relationship between Terry and the front office came out scarred. Peters had to back down in public during those negotiations, had to do the deal on McLaurin's terms. And then the player was not physically available anywhere near the level they expected. That leaves an institutional scar, even if it is not all on Terry. And there was one specific moment in Week 15 before the Giants game when McLaurin did not show up for practice. For a minute, everybody freaked out thinking he was out for the game. Turns out it was a scheduled veteran rest day. A rest day for a 30-year-old who had already missed 7 games. In the middle of a 5-12 season, bro, that is the kind of thing that in a dysfunctional organization turns into the symbol of everything that is wrong. And clearly it did, because Grant Paulson called it out publicly and pointed to how all these vet days kept the team from having full practices all year. Look, I love Terry McLaurin. This channel has been hyping that player up for years. But if Peters and the organization have decided to turn the page, I have got to trust the process. What I do need to see, though, is that if this really is McLaurin's last season in Washington, they handle it with respect. Do not turn that player into some convenient scapegoat. Let that chapter close the right way. Because this player gave everything to this franchise during the prime years when the Commanders were a straight-up mess and deserves respect. Always. Okay, bro, that was heavy. But hold up, because this next offensive line story is just as hot. And if they do not handle it right, Jaden Daniels is going to be running for dear life again in 2026. News 2, Chris Paul, left guard, the guard who could slip away in free agency. Right now, if you are Adam Peters sitting in that office staring at the free agent board, there are 31 names on it, 31. And one of the ones giving you the biggest headache does not have some flashy name, is not the one all over the front pages, but might be one of the most important pieces for success in 2026. That name is Chris Paul, not the basketball player, bro, the Washington Commanders starting left guard. And according to insider Jeremy Fowler, this player is the nastiest sleeper in this entire free agency class. What does sleeper mean here? It means a player whose market is going to be way hotter than most people expect. It means there are teams already cooking up aggressive offers. It means that when free agency opens next Tuesday, Chris Paul is going to have options, and those options are going to come with numbers the Commanders maybe cannot match, or maybe straight up do not want to match. And this, fam, is a real problem, not hypothetical. We are talking about your starting left guard, the player protecting the quarterback's blind side from the inside. That spot, along with left tackle, basically decides whether your quarterback still walks straight by season's end. And Paul was not just the starter. Paul was good, really good. Started 15 games in 2025 and played consistently solid ball on an offensive line that had chaos all over the place. Now, here's the context you have to factor in. Washington already paid Sam Cosmi at right guard. Cosmi is good, young, a core building block. They are also actively working on an extension with Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, who is obviously priority number 1 up front. If you have to pay Tunsil, who is already expensive, and you already locked Cosmi into a serious contract, the room left to give Paul the kind of deal the market is going to throw at that player might just not be there. And this is the part of NFL offseason that drives you nuts, bro. It is not that you do not want the player. Sometimes the cap math just forces you into painful calls. You also have to look at the moves they already made to brace for this. Peters is not asleep at the wheel. Before free agency even opened, the Commanders extended Andrew Wiley and Nick Allegretti. Both of them can line up at left guard, but let us keep it real. Neither is Chris Paul. Wiley has more experience, but has not proven to be some long-term elite starter. Allegretti is a depth piece with positional versatility. They are options, not guaranteed answers. The real answer might come from the draft. And there are interesting names on the board. The A to Z sports analyst already has Washington taking left guard Bo Stevens out of Iowa with pick 186 in the latest mock. That is round 6. In the 6th, you can find hidden gem or players who never see the field in any meaningful way. You cannot sit there and depend on a 6th rounder to plug your starting left guard spot if you lose Chris Paul. There are also free agent options. The Detroit Lions just cut Graham Glasgow, an interior lineman who has played pretty much every spot inside and key detail played in a scheme similar to what Commanders offensive coordinator David Blau wants to run. That is scheme fit, and that has real value. It is not some perfect slam dunk solution, but it is a legit, reasonably affordable option that could patch the hole if Paul walks. Bottom line, the Commanders already lost Tyler Biadasz at center, the anchor of the line. If they lose Chris Paul at left guard too, that means over one single offseason, the entire interior of your line has basically been ripped out and replaced. That has direct consequences for Jaden Daniels, for the run game, for the whole offensive system they are trying to build. Offensive line is not glamorous. Fans are not out here buying guard jerseys, but when the line falls apart, everybody feels it. Every sack, every hurried throw, every run that dies behind the line. Peters has to make this call with info we do not have on real cap flexibility, ongoing talks, and what the final Tunsil number is going to look like. But from the outside, as fans, the alarm light is blinking hard. If Chris Paul signs somewhere else next Tuesday or Wednesday, that is a body shot you have to absorb and replace correctly, not with duct tape, with real solutions. Okay, fam, switching gears for a minute because this next story is sweet and bitter at the same time. We are talking about a legendary tight end who played here in Washington, is rehabbing a brutal injury, and whose next move might be going back to the franchise where everything started. And as feel good as that sounds, it has real implications for the Commanders too. News 3, Zach Ertz, the return to Philadelphia and the goodbye to Washington. There are players who step on the field and you immediately know what they are about. Zach Ertz is one of those, not the most athletic, not the most explosive, but for over a decade, a name that meant crisp routes, reliable hands, and high-level football IQ. And now at 35, coming back from a torn ACL, Ertz is gearing up for what might be the final season of that NFL career. And according to Sports Illustrated, that last ride might not be with the Washington Commanders. Ed Cratch over at Sports Illustrated is reporting that the Philadelphia Eagles might be interested in bringing Ertz back. And to really get why that hits so hard emotionally, you have to understand this player's history with that franchise. Ertz was drafted by Philly in the 2nd round in 2013 with pick number 35, spent 9 seasons as an Eagle, went to 3 Pro Bowls, and had one of the most iconic plays in Super Bowl history. That touchdown grab in Super Bowl 52 that helped deliver Philly its first ever Lombardi. That moment is baked into the folklore of the franchise. That moment put Ertz in permanent ink. Then came the trade to Arizona in 2021. 4 seasons in the desert and eventually a 1-year, $3 million deal in Washington in March 2024. The Commanders saw a smart vet who could help while the roster got rebuilt. The next year, they extended that player on a $6.25 million deal for 2025. Not superstar money, solid veteran with a defined role money. Then week 14 hits, lost to Minnesota. Ertz tears the ACL. That is devastating at any age, but at 35, it makes any future in the league feel shaky. What surprised a lot of people was Ertz going public, saying the plan is to keep playing. Rehab is underway. The goal is to be cleared for week 1 of the 2026 season, roughly 9 months after surgery. Modern sports medicine has made things possible that used to be unthinkable. And if Ertz says that player is going to be ready, you at least have to take it seriously. So why Philly? The report says the Eagles need tight end help. Dallas Goedert had a huge 2025. But there are already rumors that the next contract ask might be too rich for the team's taste. If Goedert moves on, they need a stopgap in Ertz with that history, that knowledge of the city and the building. The ability to sync up with a quarterback and that veteran presence is a perfectly logical option on a cheap 1-year deal. Spot track project something around $2.2 million. That is basically veteran minimum territory for a player with that resume. And what does that mean for the Commanders? Honestly, it means Ertz is gone, and that is fine. This was never the centerpiece of Washington's offensive plan. This was a complementary piece, a role player. And this offseason, the Commanders have way more urgent needs than locking down a 35-year-old tight end coming off an ACL tear. If Ertz can go get that storybook final chapter back where it all started, in Philly with a real shot at breaking the Eagles' all-time receptions record with just 11 more catches to pass Harold Carmichael, then bro, let that player go. Let that player be happy. That shot has been earned. There is something kind of poetic about it. Ertz started out in Philly, won a ring there, became a legend there, then Arizona, then Washington, and now maybe a full circle moment back home. That is the type of NFL story that reminds you behind all the contracts and cap numbers, there are actual human beings with stories, with arcs, with emotional ties to cities and franchises. For the Commanders, tight end stays a real need heading into 2026. John Bates can block, but is not a serious receiving threat. With Ertz walking, Adam Peters is going to have to find a real successor, somebody who can be that seam route problem, that go-to option on third down, that safety valve for Jaden Daniels when the pocket is folding. That does not just take care of itself. Peters is going to have to be proactive in free agency or use real draft capital to find Washington's tight end of the future. There are free agents out there who could be interesting. Jonas Smith had a monster 2024 in Miami and is going to want a big-time deal, probably too big for Washington with everything else on the shopping list. But there are mid-tier options who might fit what Blau wants to build on offense. The key is not whiffing here. You cannot walk into the season with John Bates as the only tight end you truly trust. That is not going to cut it. Not in 2026. Not with Jaden Daniels needing weapons all over the field. But circling back to Zach Ertz for a second, because I want to close this part out with some real appreciation. This player came to Washington when nobody else wanted to. Seriously, in 2024, the Commanders were the franchise people actively dodged. No real quarterback certainty, ownership, and leadership in flux. Disaster of a recent record. And Ertz said yes, played with heart, brought leadership to that locker room. And when the injury hit in week 14, that player had already given what there was to give. So from this channel, nothing but respect and gratitude for Zach Ertz. Wherever that player lands, hope it goes well. Except against Washington, in those games, we are enemies again, bro. Today was one of those off-season days that makes you sit down and really think about what kind of team they are trying to build here. We have McLaurin staring at an uncertain future with the franchise that player poured years into. We have Chris Paul, who might slip out through the revolving door of free agency before the Commanders can get a deal across the line. And we have Zach Ertz getting ready to say goodbye to Washington and head off toward a movie-style final act. 3 different stories, all pointing to the same reality. The Washington Commanders are in the middle of a real transformation. One that is going to hurt sometimes, one that is going to test everybody's patience, but one that, if Peters manages it right, could have this team in a much better place in 2 years. That is what has me locked in. That is what keeps me watching, breaking this down, firing up these videos, because this franchise, with all the chaos and the messy history, always has something new. There is always a story. There is always a twist. And right now, with Jaden Daniels at quarterback, a front office that actually looks like it knows what it is doing even when it stings, and free agency opening in a week, bro, I am here for every second of it. Next week is going to be a roller coaster. The first 48 hours of the tampering period and the official opening of free agency are always the craziest stretch of the NFL offseason, and this channel is going to be on all of it. Every signing, every cut, every curveball, every move that touches the Washington Commanders, we are breaking it down right here with the same detail, the same energy, and the same love for this franchise we always bring. So fam, if you made it this far, first of all, thank you. For real, knowing there are people who want to understand this team as deeply as I do makes all of this worth it. Drop a like if you think the Commanders are about to lose Chris Paul in free agency. Drop a comment with your hottest take on McLaurin, on Paul, on whatever's running through your head right now. And hit subscribe if you have not already, because next week is about to be historic. See you soon, HTTR, always.